Hello everybody and welcome to Amphlett Reviews, back with another Japanese deep dive into Kinji Fukasaku's filmography, going all the way from the early 60s, leading up all the way up to Battle Without Honor, the collection, which I'll take a small break once I get up to that point. I'm exploring 10 years as much as I can of this director and get a sense of his identity and his signature style, and kind of exposing myself to more Yakuza, but also some more of his kind of wackier projects alongside it. And there's been some quite an interesting collection up to this point. Thank you for everyone for sticking with me on this journey, and it's been really fun talking about these films and kind of getting a broader sense of the actors involved in these films, and also his evolving style going into the 70s. Now, this is 1969's Japanese organized crime boss. This has the new Radiance release. This came out a couple of months back, I think in November time, December time, I believe correctly. This is the Radiance release, of course. I'll show you the edition there. You know, the booklet, and you get the disc, of course, as well. And this film stars Koji Tsuruta back once again as a second collaboration after doing Cemetery for Disbandment, and this was the birth, I would say, and very significant film, which dives on the extras on the edition and doing my research into this film. 1969's Japanese organized crime boss was the beginning of the radical change going into the modern sense of Yakuza-based movies. There is a kind of a sub-brand for this film, which I'll put a little kind of description there. This was the turning point, and you can tell by watching this within a new modern wave, a new push within Yakuza-based crime movies. And this had a lot more of Kinji Fukasaku's signature style, with his erratic kind of cinematography, with his framing and his camera work, his guerrilla style kind of editing. A lot more violence in this film, loads more violence within kind of knives and gunplay and kind of arms getting chopped off, and much more political based this time around, I would say, for this film, commenting on the kind of the Cold War, and there's a lot going on in this film. There's so much happening, and his attention to detail is unfucking believable. And it's amazing to me. It's just something that I kind of realized by watching this, with him previously watching Sympathy for the Underdog, which came out in 1971, a couple of years after this, which would be the next turning point within that kind of genre, within the next wave of kind of staple Yakuza movies that he would be known to do, and many other imitators going into it. We're going into a new kind of demand for kind of these types of films, more violent based kind of movies, more based on true stories and some factual, but it does actually make a clear point in the disclaimer of the film saying this is a fictional film. This is not based on any kind of real characters or people. However, there are some similarities, there are some kind of inspired kind of talking points during the kind of late 60s going to the 70s within the, as I mentioned, the Cold War, based on some novelizations and some actual gang activity that was going on during Japan during that time. And what's interesting about this film is actually did get 3 sequels. None of those films were actually available on Blu-ray or DVD files I'm aware of. They are available on the IMDb kind of page, and I think they're on Letterboxd. You can see the descriptions and the titles for them, something that the brand new extra on this edition just talk about very briefly, but they were very, very hard access to kind of find, and hopefully they might get released down the line. But this is basically a series of movies. It's a new franchise, essentially, part 1, where Kinji Fukasaku would do the first entry of tailored modern Yakuza kind of crime thrillers around the main actor, which will go on to do many of these films leading up to Sympathy for the Underdog, which initially was planned to be the original sequel to this film, but got changed into something else completely. And this would be the final movie from the actor in terms of a Yakuza crime kind of thriller movie within Sympathy for the Underdog, which would later kind of leave that kind of genre behind, and then would later do a final collaboration with Kinji Fukasaku within the 80s, more of a kind of love story drama based movie. Now, Koji Tsuruta did 3 films for Kinji Fukasaku, which basically defined his signature look, obviously within the glasses. And I want to point out something which I kind of noticed after watching some of these films, and before we get into the review for this film itself, I just thought this was quite amusing, quite funny, but also shows how good of a director, how much of a creator Kinji Fukasaku truly is. Now, he did Cemetery for Disbandment quite some time ago, which I reviewed, and I really enjoyed it as the main actor. Basically, he stars a character which gets out of prison, and he's a former ex-yakuza kind of member. He's kind of was higher up in the ranks, and that's a film about him reconnecting with his roots and the disbandment of the yakuza gang. He did obviously Japanese organized crime boss, which is another character which is an ex-yakuza which comes out of prison. and has to reconnect with his kind of former kind of brothers in arms, and again, politics and the kind of the proxy war that was going on, which I'll go into soon. And then also he would do Sympathy for the Underdog, playing another Yakuza character which gets out of prison and basically wants to go after the former Yakuza kind of, you know, crime organ boss and create his own one in the mix. So he basically played 3 of the same types of characters within 3 separate movies. And there very much is that sense of deja vu, familiarity, borderline plagiarism within his own work. You know, there are a little bit too many similarities within the structure of these films. Maybe he has a blueprint on his wall basically saying, this is the start of the film, this is the end of the film. It has to start with him leaving prison, and has to end with a violent bloodbath at the end of the 3rd act. And everything in between can be a bit of a similarity within previous films, within same conversations, same kind of love interest kind of characters. And it's very much a compliment to the director to basically sell and repackage the same film 3 times over, but changing it up in just the right amount of way with new performers and different types of storylines, and maybe one's a bit more violent, one's a bit more of a kind of a drama, and to do the same type of film over and over with the same actor, playing essentially the same character 3 times over, but changing things up. That's just kind of masterful to me, and essentially. And, you know, there is that kind of confidence and familiarity. We do like the same type of film kind of over and over, you know, Shaw Brothers, Hong Kong movies, American movies. We like to see a lot of similarities, but just slightly different. And this was the kind of the time, the peak, where during the kind of the mid 60s, going all the way up to the new wave, going into the more violent 70s now, where people wanted to see these types of films. And you can have the same actor playing the same type of role. On the negative side, it does lead into some more of that kind of rinse and repeat, deja vu, familiarity that just basically becomes a bit more kind of line by line. You know, there is less of a surprise going into some of these films when they kind of are like that. And I think he does change it up enough to make it stand out, to make it more exciting, to make it different, and putting these kind of actors in different scenarios, and there can be more of a change up, which makes these films a bit more exceptional. So I do think Kinji Fukasaku was fully aware of that, and I think he definitely was you know, catering to the demand of the audience, but also knowing that this was the popularity, this was the anthology of movies that were coming out, going from the more traditional swordplay-based movies to now the more aggressive, modern sense of kind of Yakuza movies. And he had enough creativity with his montages, with his erratic kind of cinematography, with his guerrilla style, his violence, and placing the actors and the characters in the good tension build kind of scenarios, which makes a really good journey to go around to. So now we're getting onto the film itself with Japanese organized crime boss, which would be the first entry in the anthology series as mentioned. This would basically be a very similar film to Sympathy for the Underdog, and within, you know, Cemetery Disbandment as mentioned. This follows basically our main protagonist, which gets out of prison after about 8 years after serving time being an ex-yakuza member, comes back, and basically there is a proxy war happening. There is this very nasty kind of violent on the street kind of war, and basically this kind of fraction war that's going on within this kind of main city. Essentially there is a power play happening, and you've got the main 2 kind of, you know, opposition kind of Yakuza kind of gangs, your clans that basically want to take full control of this city, and they want to become one entity essentially. And, you know, they are, you know, basically taking over bit by bit of these kind of fractions from the ports all the way up to the lower end of kind of poverty areas. And essentially this character has come back and kind of thrown into that mix. You know, his actual boss is someone who has been very loyal to, has died in the process of this kind of proxy war, and he is kind of overwhelmingly trying to find a peaceful, non-violent solution. He doesn't want any involvement in this whatsoever. He is being asked by multiple different kind of fractions to basically join their kind of, you know, war. And, you know, he's just seen his boss die. He's very sympathetic. You know, characters that are part of his organization, his clan, are getting killed for absolutely no reason. There is violence being broken out into the streets, and he is, as the film goes in that first portion of the film, very much a changed man, reevaluated his life. He's not the same person he was before. And I think this is a really strong, excellent performance, signature standout moments throughout the film, not just within the opening, but also many moments about the principle and the honor of this character, this idea of, you know, honor and respect. And again, the principles, as we discussed already, and this character is not budging. He does not want any violence, any part of this, and he basically is bailing out of this war. He has no interest about taking over, and he basically saying, I respectfully decline, and I want to take my clan, what's left of it essentially at this point, and just do our own kind of small operation where we won't interfere. And I like this idea of more of a politically charged kind of crime thriller this time around. This is commenting on the Cold War and this idea of the low-level kind of thug characters, the kind of smaller kind of operation clans are basically kind of fighting in the streets, while the more intellectual VIP higher-ups kind of are battling it out intellectually, essentially, and claiming land and claiming location. And there is a interesting kind of backdrop of this kind of alliance, US kind of alliance going on, which there are some very brief kind of mention about the kind of US kind of interference and kind of influence happening, and basically they're the top dogs, and basically this idea of two clans come together to basically kind of, you know, take out the opposition and to kind of side with the alliance. And things start to kind of escalate, things start to go wrong, and there are some collateral damages happening within the middle of the film. Nobara Ando and Wakayama would be the first time collaboration with Kinji Fukasaku in this film. They both have pretty decent sized roles, you know, one being more of a subplot line, happens towards more the third act, and one being the other fraction kind of, you know, team up essentially within the kind of the alliance that happened with this kind of, you know, faction takeover. This one has an all-star cast, as mentioned, 3 excellent performers in the peak of their career, the beginning of their career, I would say. There is some slight nods to Will and Wolf, which I do appreciate, and all of them, including the supporting cast, including where the film goes ultimately. Koji Tsuruta and Wakayama's kind of scene within the middle of the film where he's kind of slapping him in the face, basically saying, you had enough, are you done? You know, to the point where he's kind of slashing his face as well and beating him up and beating up his men, and he's just so shocked and so kind of like unbelievable. Like, this character is standing his ground and just not kind of, you know, reacting. He's not kind of shouting or screaming or threatening him. He is just taking a beating. He's taking this punishment. And, you know, it's an interesting kind of, again, a commentary about, you know, the principles, the old-fashioned ways, the old ways versus this erratic kind of, you know, play for power, you know, unapologetic. I'm going to wear practically nothing. I'm going to wear no shirt. I'm going to be vulgar and violent and nasty and just kind of, you know, here to make some money, here to kind of have this power play, this journey. And, you know, there is no honor, again, among thieves, no honor among men. And this character is defining that. He is, again, overwhelmingly at force within these multiple factions, and he does not want any involvement in it. And I like he stands his ground in those kind of moments. In terms of performer, it really is fantastic. Nobara Ando basically has a subplot in this film towards more the third act of the film, where he basically is tasked to assassinate a high-ranking kind of Yakuza boss member, essentially. And this has a lot of deja vu, borderline plagiarism within a previous scene and a scenario that just takes place within Cemetery Disbandment, where it basically is the exact same setup, just done in more of a high fashion, more high guerrilla style kind of editing, and there's a lot more of extension within that kind of that character in that scenario. It even has the same kind of boss character which is going after, and the same fucking location as well. That's really, really funny. I might do a side-by-shot kind of comparison to kind of show you, but I just found that really amusing, the fact that he basically rewrote the same scene twice within the same location and has the same main character which they're going after. I felt that was really, really funny. I thought he was absolutely fantastic within the By a Man's Face You Should Know Him and 18 Years in Prison. Just a really gifted, really extraordinary actor that I'm really looking forward to seeing more of his work as it goes along. But Kinji Fukasaku is a masterclass director and creator and writer, and just knows how to make these films, one, extremely entertaining and really fun, and keep it kind of fast paced and keep that energy going, which is masterful within a massive ensemble cast. You know, really utilizing his cast members to the highest degree, having probably some of the best performances I've seen of a lot of these actors within this film, and would be a blueprint, a staple of going into the Battle of Honor kind of movies later on. I think this one has a really interesting kind of political aspect to it. I like this idea of, again, typical kind of Yakuza backwards betrayals and blood honors and kind of, you know, brothers going against each other. And I like the fact that this one central character, which is defined for that type of role within previous films before this and after this, of course, would still be very kind of calm, collected, and would basically trying to reevaluate his life and trying to do some good after all the evil and bloodshed and horror that he's done beforehand. And again, it comes down to that conversation, very similar to previous films and films after this, with this idea of once Yakuza, always Yakuza, and I can't change my nature, I can't change who I am, and despite my resilience, despite my resolve, I can't make any difference here, I can't do anything, so I have to take up arms and have to make a difference by force, by violence. And it always ends in bloodshed, it always ends in horror, it always ends in death. And that's the tragedy of these films, and something that's been explored within countless Yakuza movies and also within triad movies within the Hong Kong cinema as well. It never pays, it never benefits, it's never glorified the sense of how cool it is to be Yakuza. You might be a badass, you might be cool, but you're going to end up in prison, you're going to get betrayed by your brothers, and you're likely going to get killed alongside it for causes, for missions, for goals that aren't your own. And you are delusional that the kind of the top dogs, the VIPs, the ones that are making the most money, care about you. They don't care about you. They're securing their future, securing their kind of retirement, their power, and anyone in between those kind of ranks, going all the way to the youth, all the way up to the top, you know, is dispendable, it's disposable. That's been my thoughts and opinions on Japanese organized crime boss. What are your thoughts and opinions on the sequels? Do you have access to them? Are they any good? What are your thoughts on this new wave of kind of modern Yakuza-based kind of aggressive, nasty, or violent movies? It's kind of the starting point going forward. What are your thoughts on this extraordinary cast, these performers that are giving some of the best performances in this film? What are your thoughts and opinions, guys? Please comment down below. So in the meantime, guys, I'm for reviews. Signing out.